Hello, I'm Christopher Lopez, and this is the StarCraft Observer. The show centered around the real-time strategy game StarCraft and its real stories from the community. We talk to artists, streamers, players, creators about their first encounter with the game and how it's changed their lives. Hi listeners, and thanks for tuning in. So, it's that time again where we ask the StarCraft community some questions and show you their responses on today's episode. Last month, we posted those questions via our social media platforms and got some wonderful responses. So, as we all currently know, public gatherings are minimized, social distance standards have been put in place where you stand 6 feet apart, masks have become mandated in some states here in the US, and the ease of just taking a normal walk outside is put on pause. I can't recall the number of times too that I've stepped outside and thought, shoot, my mask. All of this because of the coronavirus disease of 2019, or better known as COVID-19. I'll admit, in the beginning, when signs in Wuhan, China started to appear back in December of 2019, I thought nothing of it and didn't really pay any attention to it. But it wouldn't be until March of 2020 where things would start to slowly creep into my mind and begin to cause some worry. News began to spread of people panic buying around the world with shelves and aisles of food, water, and cleaning supplies being emptied. Long lines would be seen leading into major shopping marts. People would begin fighting over toilet paper. And as things progressed, limits to how much of a certain product you can purchase were put in place. Things were getting scary. And eventually, we would all start working from home. But then, things like yeast, scented candles, Nintendo Switches, RVs, sweatpants, and bidets were becoming hard to find, and if you did find something online, it had this ridiculous markup price. Even though this was a hectic and still a weird phase we're all going through, a lot of us started discovering new hobbies and using our newly found time for things we wanted to do, just like my next guest, Chibi Ichigo. How was your life before this pandemic?
Life before the pandemic. Wow, it's been so long. I'm trying to remember my life before the pandemic because I feel like we've been in this for a really long time. I honestly would say it wasn't too much different. My day-to-day, I guess I was traveling a lot more during the weekends. Now, because of COVID, I don't travel. And I actually stopped gaming. So I wasn't gaming before the pandemic happened. The reason I started playing StarCraft again was because I was quite bored at home. What
got you into StarCraft in the first place?
So I used to play like a lot of Blizzard games, like World of Warcraft and Diablo, and I really like Blizzard games. And the people that I played with, they started playing StarCraft. So I just kind of bandwagoned onto StarCraft. And I really like how challenging the game is, and I get really competitive. And I also like that the game is 1v1, so you're not relying on your teammates. It's just kind of like your skills versus someone else.
Have you always been very competitive growing up?
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately. But I've definitely toned it down. Like I don't get as heated anymore. Now a loss is just a loss.
So you weren't streaming as much before the pandemic hit, right?
I wasn't streaming at all before the pandemic.
Oh, wow. So what inspired you to do that?
Well, I've always, I was really into gaming growing up, and all my friends were like, oh, you should stream. But I just never got around to it, and I just never had the time. But during the pandemic, it just kind of worked out perfectly because my friend had a computer that he wasn't using. And I was like, I've always wanted to try streaming. So, one day I borrowed his computer for a couple months, and I started streaming, and here I am almost a year later.
Where were you when you first heard about the news of COVID?
I think I heard about it, but it was always oh, it's in China, it's not here yet. And then you think it's not going to get here, or even if it gets here, it's not going to be that bad. I think I didn't realize how bad it was until we first went into lockdown.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's when the reality for me started setting in too. And I kind of had that thing too, where I was like, oh yeah, it's overseas. It's it's probably going to be something swine flu, I remember like Zika being the big thing in high school for me, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And next thing you know, they're saying like, oh, you have to start working from home. And even before that, a little bit like before that, when cases started popping up here, the anxiety for me being in the office like started rising, and I'm just like, oh, like I'm looking around, people are sweaty and some people are coughing. I'm suspicious. I don't know what's going on. I think I should be home. So yeah, it started getting a little crazy. And then once lockdown hits, like that's when like we're in it.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do remember like swine flu, and I think that was the only one I remember, but I don't remember it being this bad where like we went into lockdown, obviously.
Were you working like in a public facing environment where you had to interact with people every day, or?
No, I was working in an office.
And when they told you like, oh, we have to work from home, what was your reaction to that?
It was weird just because like it was unprecedented. Like no one had ever worked from home. And I remember this is why I had so much time to game, because for the first month we were just kind of like headless chickens. Like, oh, what do I do? No one had a laptop. I had to bring like my work desktop home. So it was kind of crazy the first month. But again, that's why I started playing games, just because I had more free time.
How are you coping with everything, just being at home?
It's been nice. The area that I live in, I feel like we're not as populated. So we still have like outdoor dining. And then I still like my family and my friends are close by. So I was still seeing like my friends and family. If anything, I think I've gotten closer to my family throughout like all of COVID, because before we were always like working, or, we were just busy. So, but now I try to see them at least once a week.
Do you live close to family?
Yeah, they're pretty close.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Because I'm originally from California and I live in Virginia now. So I haven't been able to travel back home for like the last 2 years, because just a lot of like personal life issues going on. And now that COVID happened, it's just like even more stressful, and I feel like I'm trapped over here, like I can't fly because I don't want to put my family at risk, and if I do fly, I have to quarantine for 2 weeks, and we're all working from home and nobody can watch my my kid, so it's like all these like factors come into play, so it's like I can't go anywhere and I just feel stuck here, which sucks, but I can still communicate with them with like FaceTime and just giving them a call every once in a while. But like one of my family members got hit with it, and that was like the reality really set in for me, because I'm over here and I can't do anything. I'm stuck here at home. I can't help in any way, and it's just I'm watching this whole process. And he was at high risk too, but luckily he made it through. And yeah, like when something like that happens close to home, that's when things start like setting in and whatnot. So yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for interviewing with me. I did not know you lived in the East Coast, so thanks for staying up.
No worries.
My family is actually the complete opposite. I think they're very stubborn. So like my mom and my dad were still like going out, like if they were still doing things. And like my dad just went to Vegas like for New Year's. He actually caught COVID in Vegas. Now he's doing fine now.
What was his like response to you when he caught COVID? Was it just like like was he in denial about it? Like how did
much, yeah, he thinks, and now he's like an expert on it. He's like, I live because I didn't go to the hospital. No, I don't. Yeah, he's very against hospitals too.
Yeah. Oh, do they have like a fear, like if they end up there, like things aren't going to go their way, essentially?
Yeah, he pretty much thinks like because people go in the hospital, they're getting even more sick.
Gotcha. And like with him catching it and then coming out of it, is he careful more or less?
I think if anything, the opposite, because he's kind of older, so he's like, well, if I can survive it, like anyone can, pretty much.
That's unfortunate, but yeah, like I mean, like I got family members like that too, like that are just like, why are you guys still like going to these events? Why are you guys going to like rallies at the time?
yeah, there's been a lot of those this year, so. I actually just took the vaccine today, now that I'm thinking about it.
Congrats. Congrats. Did you meet like the criteria for that? And
Yeah, so I actually count as like my grandma's caretaker
Mhm.
because I think I'm one of the first ones that can receive it.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, congrats on getting the vaccine. Like that's exciting. Like how does that feel getting the vaccine?
Liberating.
Mhm.
Now I can go lick anything like the floor and not be worried that I'm going to catch COVID. If I
Don't do
drop
that.
something on the sidewalk, it's okay. I don't have to wash my hands.
And drop some candy, 5-second rules, still works. So you're good.
Yeah.
But so how did you find out that you can get the vaccine?
You just look online, and they have all these certain, I think they're like phases or categories that you can fit yourself into. So you kind of look at where you fit in, and there's a lot of people that can take the vaccine right now. Yeah, I think you just have to look it up and see if you qualify.
You mentioned that you're your grandmother's caretaker. Have you always been taking care of her?
Yes, I mean it's kind of like our whole family has been, so it's not just on me.
How do you react to like this whole COVID thing while you're taking care of her? Like, do you get worried? Do you get scared? Like, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, well, again, luckily it's not just me. So if I know like I've seen people, I probably won't see her, and like if I am with her, I'm not breathing on her. I have my mask on, and I'm just helping her with like simple things.
And I'm glad you got your vaccine because I know that's really, really difficult, like not to see your grandma. Like same thing with me. Like I like I said, I couldn't go anywhere. I felt like I was trapped, and you can't really travel much. And my grandmother's in Mexico, and she passes away during the whole thing, and I can't fly over there, and due to family reasons, and I just didn't want to put my family at risk. And it just brings me great joy that you were able to get a vaccine. You're able to take care of your your loved ones and just be there for them. So that's really awesome that you got that.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate because my grandma, she like has stage 4 cancer, so we're all very worried, like if she was gonna make it this year, and it's just good thing that it's good that we all got our vaccine. Now we can stay safe.
When you got your vaccine, what was like the first thing you did after?
Well, I had work, so I drove there, got my vaccine, and came back to work.
Oh man, I would have gotten mine. I would have like gone out and about, take my mask off. No, I'm kidding, but
I didn't want to be that person that like ends up on like some viral video.
I know, like
girl doesn't wear her mask in the grocery store or something,
shouting that she got the vaccine, that she's not going to put it back on. Oh my gosh. I was like picturing like this whole like I'm gonna go do things. I'm gonna just like be free, and
no, it's just another normal day.
And just a fun fact for all of you listening: that interview with Chibi Ichigo was done live on our stream, and it was my first time speaking in front of a huge virtual audience. Thank you, Chibi, for the wonderful experience and having me on your stream. Now we head on over to South Korea and speak to pro gamer by night and English teacher by day, Gemini. How was life for you before this whole pandemic started?
Yeah, it's different for me because I had just came to Korea, right? So I was like, for the first, how much was it? Like August, September, October, November, December, like 5 or so months, 5.5 months. Maybe about 5 months. It was awesome. Like I was in Korea. I was getting started on my new job, teaching out here. I was going all over the place, exploring Korea, what I hadn't been able to years before. Going to GSL, hanging out with all the esports nerds out here. Like it was great. It was honestly, it was amazing. It was very, very fun. It was definitely some of the most fun I've had. And then, pandemic hits, and then all of a sudden a lot of that just completely grinds to a halt. There was like that huge just kind of limbo time at the beginning of the year where we had no idea when GSL was going to start because they just kept trying to push it back, like, okay, surely this is all going to be done with soon, right guys? And it never did. So
yeah,
it just kind of became really just weird. I don't know. All of a sudden,
like, where were you when you first heard about the first case in Korea, like when it got there?
I think what I remember hearing, like I remember hearing about a drop in China, and then it was right when it was literally a year ago, Lunar New Year. It's Lunar New Year right now. Last year the whole scare was that like it was happening right as Lunar New Year was going to be happening. So the threat was that people were going to unsuspectingly get it and then spread it everywhere because everyone's moving all over the country in both China, Korea, all the East Asian countries that celebrate that. So that was kind of the initial fear of it, just uncertainty of how much it would actually spread. And then it just suddenly nuked. Where was it? It was in Daegu. Daegu was the city that got absolutely nuked by it. There's just the one super spreader down there, and it went massively, got a huge spike. And then at that point, my academy and most other places that, academies and schools, they just closed down, and I actually wasn't working for a whole like month or so, which hilariously enough was actually amazing. It was just a full free month of vacation that you would never get in Korea.
Wow.
Ever.
Yeah.
And I was getting fully paid for it the entire time too, which
Wow.
was actually kind of unsuspected. When they told us that we were going to get fully paid for it, I was kind of like, oh wow, that's really good. So I like, kind of funnily enough, when it first hit, it was actually kind of okay. Like for me, at least, just because, I'm just sitting here trying to play StarCraft all day, sitting in my house anyways. So
Right.
just get a free month to do that. But then of course it just continues going on for forever. And now it's just kind of like, holy shit. I just want to walk outside without feeling guilty of being outside,
Yeah. No, I get the same feeling too. Like I get really anxious just walking around my neighborhood, and like anytime I see somebody like 50 feet away from me, I get like super nervous. I'm just like, gosh, like I gotta like plot my path in my head and like have everything like preemptively planned when before all this happened, I can just like walk by them like no problem. So, that happens in Daegu. You're coming overseas to work. Like, what was going on through your mind when it started happening? Did you feel like you were going to lose your job or something? Or like, was there any fear of that?
Honestly, no, just because, again, like we had no idea what this thing was. Like we didn't know how big it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Even with the spike happening, we just kind of were just like, okay, yeah, it's a spike, but surely it's just going to go away. Like we've never lived in a situation like this before, right? So every step it got bigger. No one expected it to continue to get bigger. We were all just like, yeah, sure, it's just going to go away. Like, okay, we're kind of in a weird spot right now, but whatever. It'll be fine. But I never, like, there were some people that did, like, some hagwons in some places had to close down. Like one of my coworkers now, he was working at a spot that had to close because of the whole pandemic, and now he's working at my place. But I never felt worried about that personally, just because I'm at a slightly bigger place. It's, somewhat, it's not like a massive chain, but it's like kind of somewhat of a chain where, there's multiple campuses, where it felt like it was going to be a place that could sustain throughout. So I personally was not really worried for myself. Maybe I should have been more, looking back. I don't know, because it was a really weird, uncertain thing. But if I was at like a much more smaller place, or like one of those more family owned ones, I probably would have been a little bit more worried. But it ended up being okay.
Yeah, understandable. Like it's like it was already well established, like big company that you kind of had the feeling that they can hold their own for a while.
Big enough, yeah.
Yeah. So do you start working from home, or do you just get put on hold and everything gets contained really well?
So basically, we had the month. Initially, like, we were still in person because, again, we didn't know how big it was going to be. It seemed like it was just kind of a random, whatever kind of thing. They were suggesting that we wear masks while teaching, and me and the other teachers were kind of just like, what? Wearing a mask while I'm literally talking for 5 hours, like, that's fucking exhausting. Like, I don't know. Like, at first, because, again, we didn't really understand what the hell was happening. But then once it really like when the Daegu spike happened, and then we were just like, oh god, okay, that's kind of, that's something. That's when, we closed down. That's when masks became mandatory absolutely everywhere. So then once that finished, then we did come back in person. And then because at that point we had contained it pretty well. Korea did pretty well containing it after that first month. So we were able to be in person, but we would always be wearing masks and all that good stuff, sanitizer and stuff like that. And it basically kind of just stayed like that for a long time, for basically the whole year, until the end of the year is when it started to get a couple more peaks. And then from those couple peaks, because they did not want to trigger more widespread, they issued that a lot of places would go online. So we went online for a couple weeks, then we went back offline for a bit because it went back down again. But ever since I think it was November, we've been online this entire time, actually. So for like 4 months. And just now next week, we're supposed to be hopefully going back in person again, but like maybe mixed online and offline.
And so you only had that 1 month break, and then Korea was able to contain it so well that you were able to go back in person and wear a mask. And teaching was essentially the same, right? But there's just, I'm assuming, social distancing guidelines or something, or
like the desks have to be farther apart. So like group work and stuff like that is very much more difficult. There's a pretty big pain in the ass because getting some of these kids to want to be interested in what you're talking to them about. It's really hard to do without group work a lot of times. And so it would be really kind of but I would. Sometimes we would try to do it, but it's still kind of like, this doesn't feel good. Like, they're getting too close to each other. Like, this is not great. So it is rough, trying to keep their attention, especially online, can be tough for some of them because they just get so disconnected. In some ways it is better though, because some of the kids that are the absolute, they are the center of attention in class. When they're back at home, they suddenly shut up. So that's actually kind of great. But it's the overall thing, and it just feels better to be in person, of course. And it'll feel so good when I can see their faces in person again and just not have to wear a mask all the time. It'll be unbelievable.
With this whole pandemic going on, like, how do you feel being so far away from your family?
Yeah, it is different. Just because this whole situation that I'm in is just so unique because I'm not used to living so far away from my family for this long of time. This is the only time I've ever done this before, so it's definitely different. And then the fact that we have a pandemic on top of it is different. And the fact that America is, America during this whole pandemic makes it also even more different. So it's like my family's pretty overall safe and very. They adhere to anything that they'll see about this, and they have been. Just like a couple of times, I'm just kind of thinking like, especially like my grandparents or something like that. Like, what if they're just unlucky? Like that would be super bad to just be sitting here in Korea, and like of all the times for something this bad to go wrong, that's when it goes wrong, kind of a thing. So it's like that. You think of that every now and then, but overall, it's kind of like a out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, where I'm not constantly being reminded about it by seeing them and all this kind of stuff. So it's like I can, for the most part, ignore it. That's generally how I'll deal with certain feelings like that, where I'm just like, I just try not to think about it in any way, and that helps to not be anxious and worried about it. I kind of just trust that they are, I trust that they're doing their diligence to be safe, and that's enough for me.
Coming up after the break, we learn what it's like to deal with COVID firsthand. Hi everyone. If you're enjoying this podcast so far and would like to keep up with the StarCraft Observer, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter, where not only will you get updates about the latest episodes, but you also get to see some beautiful StarCraft-related fan art. Once again, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter. Ever found yourself wondering how you could improve your streaming experience? Need a new stream overlay? Need new emotes created for your subscribers to use? Or just all around need help getting something graphically designed? Well, now you can when you head over to www.grizzlygaming.mx. Grizzly Gaming can help you evolve, transform, and improve your project's overall look, feel, and design. We know because the StarCraft Observer has worked with Grizzly Gaming, and the experience was phenomenal. Not only were they 100% reliable, dependable, and easy to work with, they constantly give you updates as to how your design's looking, with fast and effective communication. You can also view their portfolio of past projects, what they've been working on, what games they've been playing, and read their latest blog, Road to Masters, where Lex Grizzly documents her latter experience on the Road to Masters League. To learn more about Grizzly Gaming, head on over to www.grizzlygaming.mx. That's www.grizzlygaming.mx. Welcome back. So far, we've spoken to Chibi Ichigo and Gemini, who've shared their stories as to how they've been affected by the pandemic. We now speak to somebody who I also tune in from time to time and enjoy watching their stream.
I go by Holleeze on Twitch, but my name is Holly, and I'm a StarCraft 2 streamer.
And what race do you play?
And as a Terran, but I dabble in Protoss a little bit, and sometimes Zerg when I'm feeling really frustrated.
How have you been affected by the pandemic?
So, it's weird to say, but I feel like I'm a lucky person in that I've been able to keep my day job. I've been able to work from home. So in that sense, I have been very fortunate compared to a lot of my counterparts in the industry that I work in as a day job. I work in the entertainment industry, actually. But it's been difficult mentally. Like, even though I have a job still, and even though I have a place to isolate from others, it sucks, It sucks not being able to do the things that we used to be able to do. And it sometimes it feels like mentally difficult to kind of see like the future growth of one's career or one's just life goals. You're just kind of stuck in sort of a purgatory. But I've been fortunate. I've been able to work and work from home. But even though I work from home and I'm completely isolated and I haven't seen my parents since January 2020, I guess, which the pandemic started officially March 2020 for us in the States. I actually got COVID.
Oh,
and
shoot.
That sucked majorly.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So it was really frustrating because, again, I'm one of the people that I like to at least try to adhere to the precautions and stuff that we've been told, like wearing masks and washing hands and not seeing any friends in person, and staying isolated and working from home. And yet I still caught COVID in August. And it might have been, I live in an apartment complex and I live in a big city. I live in Los Angeles. So it's possible just like the sheer density of where I live exposed me without even even though I was trying like hardest to not get exposed. But basically, the very first day, it's like you kind of feel like, do I have a cold? It's like leading up to like actually getting COVID. It's like, I'm sure many, many, many people have experienced like having like the itch in their back of their throat. Like, oh my God, am I sick? Or a cough? And it's like you get that anxiety, but then when you actually get it, it really hits you like a truck. Like, you actually know you have it. And I got tested pretty much right away. I live in Los Angeles, and the testing out here was really great. It was easy. I went through a drive-through testing site, and I got the results back the very next day. And when I saw the positive test result, it's just like this weird like sinking feeling. It's like, that was like honestly one of the worst parts, was knowing that I have this disease that has been like predominantly all over the news and just like every aspect of our lives being kind of controlled by it. It's like, I have it now. And it's kind of a waiting game. You don't know how your body's going to respond. Are you going to be okay? Are you going to have to go to the hospital? My symptoms, everyone has a different experience, which is kind of weird, but I had really severe body aches, a really high fever, and I couldn't sleep. I think I just got anxiety, honestly, insomnia from anxiety, not from the virus itself. And it just sucks because your body needs sleep while you're trying to heal and fight off the disease. And I had a rare symptom of a sore throat. Apparently that's not a common symptom, but I had a very severe sore throat. And basically I just spent my time watching like other StarCraft 2 streams. Like I watched a lot of Boom's stream, which really cheered me up during that time. It was a really rough time. But after about 3 or 4 days of the symptoms, I finally got some rest and I finally felt better. And the lingering symptoms I had were just like I had it's really, really difficult to explain, but I had like this lung pain. Like it hurt to breathe for a little bit, and that was spooky. And I was like, oh my God, please. But otherwise I felt okay.
Yeah.
And then after like that kind of passed, I lost my sense of smell completely. I'd like put my nose into like a bag of ground coffee and I couldn't smell it. Like,
oh my gosh.
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But after some time, thankfully, again, it's like I feel very lucky. It's like I survived very like not fun to go through, but it wasn't like I had to go to the hospital or I had to like have some severe symptoms that like followed me through like till today. So yeah, that was my personal experience with it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So you get COVID, and then are you by yourself the whole time?
No, I live with my partner, so we were in quarantine. We took it very seriously, and thankfully, like, I mean, I made a social media post because, you know, like I grew up in an area where there might be people that didn't really take the seriousness of COVID like seriously. So I made a post so they would know that because I feel like a lot of times people, if they know someone personally that is going through it, then it's real to them. So I made a post on social media, and then I had a lot of my local friends like really feel bad for me. So I had people dropping food off, and I was able to like not, it was just like really, really weird because it's like I was not able to leave the apartment. Like the city of Los Angeles sent me this official document and was like, by receiving this document, you agree to not leave your home until this X date or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Like how did that feel, like getting that letter and being like, dude, I got COVID and now I'm getting this letter from the city?
It's kind of funny because I got it like 2 weeks later. Like after I got it after that. I already just like isolated myself. Like I took responsibility for myself, and it was strange. It was just like weird how delayed everything was. And I actually did have a contact tracer call me, and they like, it was really weird. It was like 7:30 in the morning they called, which is like, you know, if I'm sick, why would I be awake? But I was at insomnia, so I took the call. And the guy was calling from some call center where I couldn't make out what he was saying and all of this and that. And I tried to give information, but like I really as a contact tracer, I don't think they actually accomplished anything. Like they're just like, so where have you been? And I'm like, Ralph's. And they're like, okay. Like it's a grocery store. And that was basically, they didn't ask me which Ralph's. They didn't ask me like anything else. I'm like, okay.
Thank you for doing that social media post. I know it takes a lot to do that, and, you know, to kind of put yourself out there and say like, hey, just to let you know that I've caught it and want you all to be aware, essentially. Before you made that post, like, were you nervous or like, how were you feeling?
I was furious that I had COVID.
Oh my goodness.
And I was really upset. It's because, you know, I see people not taking it seriously, and it's like, great, now I'm actually affected. Thanks a lot, like jerks. And like, hopefully you feel bad. But like, you know, in a way, because I recovered, I almost feel like, wait, did I put out like, oh, it's fine. She recovered, so we'll be fine. I don't know. That was so long ago now. It was back in August, so like half a year ago almost, like what, 5-6 months. Like the unfortunate thing and the really, you know, really, really sad thing is I have some former coworkers of mine, some like friends of mine from my past that actually have now, I'm starting to see like people that I know losing their parents in LA, and it's much more severe, and it makes me feel bad. It's just like, it shouldn't be this way. It never had to be this way, but
I didn't quite let Holly finish that thought during our interview, but that last sentence really stops and makes me think heavily on all that's happened. What if things were properly taken care of? Just some food for thought. My next guest was on the run for a bit and had to quickly adapt to what was happening around him, and most importantly, make it back home before it was too late. You can definitely say that our next guest, Drekken, or Drek for short, is the planner we all need in our life. Drek is the type of person that not only thinks about getting from point A to point B, but rather prepares for all possible scenarios in case things go wrong. Here's Drek.
I'm Drekken, also known in the community as DrekkSama, and I run ES Champ.
Where were you when you first heard about the COVID pandemic?
In the beginning, I would have been here in Canada, in Toronto somewhere. And, my initial reaction was, And, but then when I went to London in March of 2020 for just an out of country adventure, that's when things started to get real, because I suddenly had messages from my friends and family like, you need to come home now. You need to get on a plane and you need to come back like right now, because you might not be able to get inside the country. And I was like, look, I think you are all like, what could you possibly be going on? We already know about this from quite some months ago. So what changed from here and now? And sure enough, our prime minister had gone on to national television and he had addressed the country. And when your prime minister comes and addresses the country, you're just like, oh, uh-oh.
Yeah.
But the atmosphere was different in London, because London had taken a non-reactionary stance. Their prime minister had decided at the time that they were going to not do a lockdown, not react. So it was pretty normal. So it felt weird at the time, because you had people panicking in my home country, but the country I was currently in was just, people were full out. Everyone's in the shops. People are celebrating. Parties were still going on. And so, I had mixed feelings, because I had people who were forwarding news broadcasts and taking screenshots and, essentially telling me that I will probably be stuck where I am.
And when you heard that, and people are texting you to come home and you finally see the prime minister, do you immediately grab a ticket back home?
See, the problem with panic is panic causes panic buying. So the ability to buy a ticket was not possible, because what was probably at the time a $600 ticket suddenly became almost a $1,500 ticket, as people were scrambling to return to Canada. So I took the opportunity to kind of pause. I was still there for about a week, and I'm like, all right, look, I don't think my country will abandon me here. If the worst case comes, they would probably repatriate me. They would probably find a way to bring me back. That's one thing I can always be grateful for Canada for all its other things, is that it definitely it looks out for its citizens. So I wasn't concerned that my country would abandon me in another country.
Yeah, I think that was my one of my big concerns too. Not that I was traveling or anything, but if I was in your position and I'm from the States, I'd have that abandonment feeling, I'd have to go now, because the previous administration was. Yeah. So it's I'd have to spend $2,000 on a ticket to go back, because that's how I'm feeling. It's just I feel like I'd be abandoned and locked out and I can't come back in, essentially. So I'm glad it all worked out for you.
It felt really surreal, though. Here's the thing, is because we still had about a week there. My partner and I were there, and we still had a week and things felt normal. But meanwhile, we were watching the broadcasts as our prime minister addressed the country every day. And so I had to play a part of a role of making sure my partner was just as calm as I presented on the outside.
Yeah.
And at the same time, come up with contingencies just in case things went sideways.
Wow. What kind of contingencies were you putting in place, or already planning?
Well, I had to plan what would happen if we couldn't return to Canada. What was the steps? What were the plans? I did research on where our embassy was, what's their policy on these kind of things. What is the health insurance, or the health, what's the health? How do we claim our health insurance, our travel health insurance, while we're in another country? And also, if we were trapped in London, where could we stay for a longer period of time? Because our current accommodations were going to expire at the end of our trip. So we would need to find new accommodations or find a way to extend our current one. These kind of things I kind of put to top of mind, front in hand. And like just as we were leaving, London it had gotten bad where their government had decided not to take it too aggressively, but the inner cities and the citizens businesses had started to make the decisions on their own. So suddenly we were in a situation where it started to become real quick.
Yeah. Wow. You really thought of everything, man. Like you saying all that stuff was just like I was picturing myself in your position and my stress levels would be through the roof. Like I know I'm doing like all that I can do, but at the same time there's like this lingering feeling like there's something on my back just telling me that like, no, you're going to be stuck here for the rest of your life, you know, during this pandemic. But I'm
a planner. That's what I do. That's what I do for my life. My life is I do plans. I make like events and that kind of stuff. That's just plans. I create plans and then I create contingencies for those plans.
Wow. Good on you, man. You're like,
that's just me. That's one of my better skills is just, and those plans don't always work, but you know, the idea of just having the plan makes me feel better.
And so like on the way back, what's going on through your mind? Are you still stressed out about the whole thing? Like, what are you thinking about?
On my way back, I don't know. I'm more concerned about making sure my partner is feeling secure and safe. And because I feel for myself, it's my responsibility to put that brave face forward and ensure that they don't feel like everything is falling apart. Because if my partner is panicking, then I am not only have to be concerned about the situation, then I'm concerned about my partner and the situation. So I can only handle so many things at once.
Wow. Yeah, you sound very similar to like how I have to be sometimes, because I have a family. So if one person panics, then it kind of like resonates for everybody else, and it just throws everything into chaos. It's like you got to cut out all the emotions almost.
Absolutely. So I had to be very jovial, almost a little flippant about the situation, so that it appears, at least on the outside, that everything is going to be okay. Coming back, that was my primary concern was, all right, regardless of what happens, when we land, when we get off this plane, there is always a solution. There's always a solution. And I just need to have the clarity of mind to be able to calculate if, like, for example, the biggest trouble we would have when we landed was that we did not have any grocery preparations, right? And so we have to quarantine for 14 days. Our government declared it while we were away that you'd have to quarantine for 14 days. And so we had no groceries. You know, what does that mean for us? How do we get groceries? I had to come up with these kind of solutions to be ready for when we land, because obviously my partner is asking me these very same questions. Like, you know, what are we going to do about groceries? And also we couldn't take certain transportation from the airport. So like we don't drive. We are, you know, we're urban city dwellers. So we have, I would say, a pretty amazing transportation network in Toronto. So we have no need to own a car or own a vehicle or rent a vehicle. And so we had to figure out, like, how do we get back from the airport? How do we minimize contact with as minimal people as possible and get into our home? And that was what was going through my mind. How do I execute on that?
Our last guest was already working from home when the pandemic began to spread here in the United States. So transitioning from office to working from home wasn't much of a challenge. A lot of you out there may know my next guest, who goes by the name of Jayborino. And speaking to Jayborino was so insightful, and it really allowed me to see the bigger picture. Here's Jayborino. Where were you when you first heard about the pandemic?
That's a good question. Probably at home, because I was working from home at the time already. I remember seeing some news reports about it in China and pretty much expecting like, oh, this will happen. But I don't think anybody like could truly conceptualize what the change in lifestyle would lead to.
when you first heard about it, were you afraid, or were you more like, okay, this thing will pass?
I wasn't afraid for myself. Like, I was more afraid for the implications for like on a more broad sense, especially like my grandparents and stuff. But again, this was kind of before things started getting more out of control. And like I was in university for the swine flu, smaller pandemic, and yeah, and I got vaccinated for that. But like when I was that age, I don't think that I really cared. Like I went and got my shot, but I never really thought like, oh, this is a big deal. So now it kind of, when I look back to that, it makes me think like, okay, it makes more sense how I see young people treating this one. Cause like I look back, I'm like, I didn't really treat it with the, I guess, respect that the situation really deserved. So yeah, I guess like my only experience with like a pandemic in that sense was that. And again, I was young enough where it just didn't really matter to me. So I guess, no, I didn't really think it would nearly be as serious, but I think everyone knew it was coming, but didn't really know what that could mean.
And at what point did you start to realize like, oh yeah, this is going to get crazy?
For me, it was when it was very clear that we were lacking any sort of cohesive leadership at a national level. It made me very nervous when our president went on and said, we only have, 3 or 10 cases, whatever, it's going to be gone by Easter. It was that moment when I said, this is going to get very bad because this is not being taken seriously. And it was clear that there were really no cohesive plans. And then I think over the next 2 to 3 months, we saw a lot of states taking their own leadership, and many of them did okay. A lot of them did very poorly. But the point was there was no national plan, and you'd see a lot of the countries that did come out decently, like Korea, like New Zealand. They had very cohesive national plans, more communal thinking in general, and I think that around like that March, April time last year was when I knew that we'd probably end up quarantined at some point in the year.
I totally agree with you on that point. Like, just our leadership was just terrible and just didn't take things seriously. So that's why cases were rising everywhere, and it was just it was a mess.
And I mean, it's like, I think to an extent, again, when I say like lack of leadership, I think like leadership and acting by example or leading by example is like incredibly important in almost every context. Like at work, any sort of group, any sort of organization, it's incredibly important. So that's why I think it was just a shame what happened.
Yeah, I know. It's more like our jobs took it seriously and told us to go home.
Right. Yeah. When you saw businesses and localities and states take it more seriously than the group that you would expect to be the ones that... I think what it did too, though, is it sort of shocked the system in the sense that, I mean, we had several years prior to this to kind of be prepared for this, but like realizing how fragile our institutions are in taking care of us, where you just assume like, oh, we have like a government that does this, right? And then I think what this maybe made people realize is like, well, the government is made up of people. It's not just a thing that works. Like the gears are turned by average people that go to work every day and turn those gears. It's not just something that you casually get that you're entitled to when you're born. So like these things happen for a reason. I hope that the way that maybe this opens people's eyes, specifically in my generation, like older millennials who I feel like, I know that I never really thought about this stuff, but especially with the pandemic and like the last, 6 to 8 to 10 years is kind of exposing the fragility of the systems around us and realizing that maybe it will incentivize people my age to get more involved in public service and volunteering and community work.
Before we sign off, I did ask all of our guests one single question. That question, what are you looking forward to once all this is over?
Literally just the simplest pleasures of just walking outside without a mask, being able to go wherever I want, seeing people's faces. Like it sounds so like I feel weird saying it. Like I can't believe I'm saying something like this. Where I'm like, I just want to see someone's face. like it just sounds so stupid, but it's so serious. Like, yeah, it just feels it feels so like I was talking to my friend about this because like you'll be walking down the street, right, and you see some idiot just like with their nose popping out of their mask only, and you're just like you feel like you're watching some you're like in some Victorian era England or whatever, and you see some woman with her ankles showing, and you're like, "Oh God, cover that up! What are you doing?" Animal. Like, that's literally what it feels like, and that's insane to me. Like that's a normal thing to feel now. It's like I just want to go outside and look at people and be fine seeing people's faces, not feeling like it's a weird thing, like I'm gonna die because I see that, like just doing anything normal. But like something more specific, I guess, would, you know, being able to go to GSL again would be sick. That's like half the reason I came here. Being able to go to the studio and see all those the people there and stuff would be amazing. And just, you know, traveling all over the country and being able to finally actually see the place that I traveled halfway across the world to live in.
What are you looking forward to once all this is over?
Honestly, I just want to see my parents. I have a really good relationship with my parents. I live in a different state, and they're getting vaccinated soon, so they're actually going to come down and see my wife and I, because we bought a house during the pandemic, and that was really exciting. It's a lot of work, and they really wanted to come down and see it and help us out, but they couldn't. Or rather, I mean, they could have, but we all chose that it would not be the best idea to do that. And so they're coming soon, and I'm really excited to see them.
What are you looking forward to once all this is over?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question because it makes me feel hopeful. Because what I'm looking forward to is that moment when they say like restrictions are lifted, I'm going to hold the biggest esports party this country has ever freaking seen.
I'm looking forward to traveling again. I haven't traveled anywhere. And I'm also looking forward to going back to buffets. A lot of buffets shut down during COVID, and I'm very excited to go back to them.
Oh my gosh, you're so right. Like, I didn't even think about that. You know, buffets. I miss buffets.
Yeah, me and my family, I'm mostly Chinese. Like, we used to go to these big Chinese buffets that serve like Chinese food, sushi, and everything. So I'm really looking forward to doing that.
Just like being able to go out and play soccer on actual soccer teams, like recreationally, it'd be nice. Just like going to the movies, that sort of stuff. A lot of stuff that's like entertainment. But also, you know, seeing my parents without fear of like potentially killing them is it's a pretty big one for me.
No, you're definitely right. All of today's guests have a stream which you can tune into and follow. And if you really enjoy their content, subscribe while you're at it. Let them know the StarCraft Observer sent you. The links to their channels can be found in the podcast show notes. Editing, music, and production was done by your host, Christopher Lopez. Once again, you can follow the StarCraft Observer on Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, or on Facebook. Outro music by the talented Televangel. Head on over to their Bandcamp or YouTube. You can also find Televangel on Spotify. More details about Televangel in the podcast show notes. Until next time, friends, thank you very much.